Welcome back, everybody, to more from the Stabilized. I'm here today with Jordan. How are we doing, Jordan?
Very well, thank you.
That's good. And we are taking a look at the much-anticipated Alolan Exeggutor deck. We featured this a couple of times, but due to the fact that I forgot to print off proxies of my own, we didn't have an opportunity to take a look at the list. But we have them now, so let's run through this deck. How do you feel about it, Jordan? Do you like it?
I like it a lot more now that we've printed out a Psychic Execute. I think that one of the biggest problems was the fact that we were having a bit of trouble with consistency, but now that we've got both Psychic and Grass Executes, we can find our basics with a whole bunch of different search because we can use either Mysterious Treasure or Netball to find them.
That's true. So this Leech Seed Execute from our Unified Minds set gives you a little bit more flexibility in the early game. There are two Execute that we could actually use for the Grass one. At the moment we've got the Bullet Seed one from Team Up, purely because that's the easiest one for me to find at short notice. But there's also another Execute which I believe has Continuous Explosion. So Bullet Seed, flip 4 coins, attack does 10 per heads, and Continuous Explosion does 20 times, does 20 times the number of heads that you roll in a row. So I guess there's a 50-50 shot of you doing 20 damage both ways.
Yeah, the Bullet Seed probably seems like a safer option because you're more likely to get damage than completely whiffing on the other one, but I don't think it matters too much. I think as long as it's a Grass type Execute, it's going to serve its purpose just fine.
Certainly will, and to evolve those Executes, we have 3 Dragon Alolan Exeggutor and 1 Grass Alolan Exeggutor. All of them have the Tropical Shake attack, which is 20 plus 20 more for every basic energy that is in your discard pile. The Grass one, for me, could be a potential cut into another Dragon, just because Grass doesn't really have much use at the moment. There's no Lichen Rocks to really take advantage of, but it also acts as kind of a buffer just in case you come up against something like a Gardevoir Sylveon, I guess.
Yeah, it certainly helps having a different weakness on one of your attackers. It's not a huge deal. I mean, the fact that this is a non-GX with 160 HP, in my opinion, is the main draw of the card. The fact that it can get a 2-hit carry for 1 energy is pretty strong as well, but it's really just a bulky Pokemon. There are not really many decks want to deal with 160 HP on a non-GX.
That is true, and to go along with our attacker, our Alolan Exeggutor, we have a 1-2 line of Altaria. Now this is the Fight Song Altaria, which adds 20 more damage to our Dragon Pokemon's attacks. So that means that you can go from 120 on Tropical Shake up to something like 160, which seems like a reasonably good amount to be hitting.
Yeah, it's always interesting seeing the 1-2 line of a stage 1, like we played at in our Zoroark list a while back, but it does make sense. We'll get to that in a little bit, but yeah, the Altaria kind of just doesn't really give Exeggutor a 1-hit KO potential that often. I mean, with Shrine of Punishment ticks, sometimes we'll be able to get you those 1-hit KOs, but most of the time you kind of just want to guarantee you getting 2-hit KOs on cards such as Reshiram Charizard, which would usually survive 2 hits from Tropical Shake, and hey, maybe getting 1-hit KOs on some annoying 130 HP Pokemon like Giratina, or maybe even other Alolan Exeggutors, mean that Altaria just really helps your numbers a lot.
Yeah, it does, and it means that it's not super hard to get out. I mean, we've got a Swablu there. That's not the correct Swablu for those people who are playing along at home. We do have 1 copy of Ditto Prism as well to help us get into them, but the real way we're going to try and use them is with Lance Prism Star, so we'll talk about that when we get to our supporters. Ditto Prism is really good in this deck because obviously our attacker and our support are both stage 1s, so we need to make sure that we get into them. And we also have another stage 1 support Pokemon in a 2-2 Zebstrika line. Sprint is going to be the way that we're going to try and draw cards with this deck, so being able to do so off of a Ditto is not a bad idea.
Yeah, Zebstrika is really strong in this deck because not only is it going to help with your consistency throughout the game, but it's also going to really increase the speed you're able to get to your full power Tropical Shake, being able to sprint away a whole bunch of different types of basic energy. It's going to really make sure that you're getting those turn 2 or turn 3 at the latest full power Tropical Shakes and getting 2-hit KOs as fast as you can, because if you're only doing less than 100 damage, it really does feel inefficient when you could be doing so much more.
Yeah, and I've got the 60 HP Blitzel here. With this deck, you can probably play the 70 HP one if you're afraid, because, you know, you don't need to play the 60 HP one. I just happen to have 2 of those free and we can protect them from any spread with Mew. Bench Barrier, very powerful, and Psi Power can help us tick over some of those awkward numbers, things like Reshiram Charizard that have an odd number of damage that we need to hit. We can pop 10 or 30 damage on there to try and make it a little bit easier to two-shot.
Yeah, it certainly helps in scenarios like that, but it's just really important to have a card like Mew in a deck like this where you got so many different evolving basics that if your opponent ever has something like a Dugong and can just start sniping off these basic evolving Pokemon, then you're really going to start losing very quickly if you don't have access to a Mew.
Yeah, you want to make sure that you can keep your Execute, your Dittos alive, as well as your Zeb Strikers. You want to keep those in play. Well, that's our Pokemon line. It's a pretty basic one, and we're going to try and find those Pokemon through a number of different means. We'll start off with the supporters. The supporter line is a pretty standard one that we've seen a lot in this format. It's 4 Lily, 3 Cynthia, and Erica as our draw supporters, as well as a Brock's Grit to help us get cards back.
The Brock's Grit is kind of awkward in this deck sometimes because obviously you're going to have all sorts of different colored basic energy in your discard pile that you typically don't want to shuffle back into your deck, but most of the time that's not going to be a problem because the main thing you want to be getting back with Brock's Grit is your grass energies, obviously, and just recycling your Exeggutor line. So it's a super important resource to have, just got to be a little careful with when you time it.
That's true. And the last card in our supporter line is Lance Prism Star. This is a really interesting supporter that works really well with this list. What you do with this card, you play it once one of your Pokemon has been knocked out by an attack from your opponent, and then you search your deck for 2 Dragon Pokemon and put them onto your bench and shuffle your deck. So for us, we're going to be looking for either another Alolan Exeggutor as an attacker, or an Altaria in order to power up the attacks of our Exeggutor. It's really, really good because it means that you can kind of start attacking with Exeggutor out of nowhere if you've lost one last turn and you don't have that backup Execute, which used to be one of the big problems that this list had.
It's such a huge swing card in this deck because, as you said, you can kind of play a little riskier knowing that you've got Lance in your deck. You can always just kind of make your board a lot better, even if it looks really bad. And it can really swing some huge turns where you can get a double Atari out of nowhere and do a whole bunch more damage than your opponent was anticipating. It's just super good for chaining your Exeggutors for like most of the game. I feel like if you ever get Lance out, then you're going to have a pretty good setup for majority, if not the whole game.
Yeah, you're probably going to be fine. So that's our supporter line. It's a pretty basic one. Obviously, Lance adds a little bit of nuance to it. Our items, again, are going to be very, very similar, except we've got some extra Pokemon Search. We have 3 copies of Mysterious Treasure and 4 copies of Pokemon Communication. We've seen these a lot. These are probably the 2 best Pokemon Search cards in the format right now, but we also get the added benefit, since we're playing some basic grass Pokemon, of playing 3 copies of Netball. Netball not only helps us find our baby Executes, but it also lets us search out grass energy, which is really important. Since we need to play a number of different types of energy, our Netballs can help us find the right energy on the right turn to be able to start attacking.
It's almost this deck's version of Viridian City, but it can also act as a Brooklet Hill and search out your basic Pokemon, so it's a super strong card. And when post-rotation was announced and we found out what limited Pokemon search options we were going to have, I remember looking at Netball as like one of the cards I really wanted to abuse the most, so it's great that we finally found a deck that can kind of make good use of it.
Yeah, and one of the obvious problems with Netball is that it only searches out grass Pokemon and grass basics at that. And with Reshiram Charizard, and I was combining Reshiram Charizard with Pikarom there, I got confused. And Blacephalon both being really, really big threats. Grass Pokemon aren't necessarily your go-to, but the fact that we evolve into a Dragon type means that we're not super stressed about that. We can deal with the fact that we've got Fire Weak basics. And because we don't have a Viridian Forest or even an old school Brooklet Hill, it means that our Stadium line is freed up for 3 copies of Shrine of Punishment. One of the real positives about having a bulky non-GX attacker is that you're able to really hit hard and start ticking up lots of turns of Shrine without the risk of having a knockout every single turn. Alolan Exeggutor is unlikely to be knocked out cheaply, and so if your opponent decides instead that they want to engage in half hitting, then your Shrines are going to start ticking over very quickly.
Yeah, Shrine is probably stronger in this deck than any other deck in the format right now. If I had to be biased, I think that the fact that Exeggutor can sometimes get one-hit KOs on some of the big GXs in the format right now, such as Blacephalon or Ultra Necrozma, which can both be knocked out in one hit with combination of Altaria and Shrine of Punishment, makes it such a big threat. But not just that, but even just whittling down tag team Pokemon slowly, bringing a Reshizard down to a 2-hit KO fairly easily, or just making Pikarom maybe eventually get in range of a 160 damage Exeggutor. It's just got so much pressure that it really forces your opponent to deal with it, or they're going to fall behind.
Yeah, they certainly are, and Shrine of Punishment, as we saw at last World Championships, is an incredibly valuable stadium if your opponent doesn't deal with it. One of the things that we need to do, though, is we need to make sure that we're discarding energy. We can do that with Mysterious Treasure, but one of the other ways we're going to try and do that is with 4 copies of Acrobike. Acrobike not only helps us get into the cards that we need at the right time, gives us that little bit of extra draw, but it also allows us, if we hit an energy, to start discarding them. So one of our big problems with this deck is that there's not a lot of discard options. So Acrobike is one of the ways we've decided to do that.
Between the Acrobike and the sprints from Zebstriker, it really lets you go through your deck really quickly, allows you to chain your Exeggutors, get your Shrine of Punishments when you need them, and just obviously accelerate the damage that your Exeggutor is doing as fast as you can. And we actually saw in one of the games we featured that I think when Scott was playing the deck, he almost decked out because of how much draw power there was in this deck. So you have to be a little careful at times, but it really makes this deck go pretty fast.
It does, and it also means that you don't need things like Shuckle, which used to be played in Alolan Exeggutor. You can afford to not play Shuckle because, one, your bench space is already pretty tight with Altaria, but you've got enough discard option with Acrobike, Mysterious Treasure, and Zebstriker that you can probably get away with not playing them.
Yeah, playing one of Shuckle wouldn't be a bad idea, but it certainly gives you a lot of options to be able to discard energy even without it.
That's true. One of the big problems that our deck has is that all of our Pokemon are reasonably chunky, especially the ones that we want to have in the active. Alolan Exeggutor has 3 retreat cost, so we're playing 3 copies of Switch. We don't want to find ourselves in a position where we've got an Alolan Exeggutor in the active and no energy to attack with, so Switch gives us the option to move it out of harm's way if we have to, but we also play 1 copy of a skateboard, so if things like Altaria or Mew or even Zebstriker get stuck in the active, we can attach this there and use it as a pivot.
Yeah, and there's also quite a few special conditions going around the format right now. Obviously, we see F1 GX is taking advantage of bursting burners it always has, and also just the Dene GX using Tingler Return has been quite relevant in our testing, a lot more than it used to be, because Paralysis seems to stick more now that Guzma's rotated.
Yeah, it does. Now that you can't get out of there as easily, it's obviously much more powerful. So that escape board and those 3 switch gives you a little bit of mobility just in case things go wrong. And just in case you are behind, we have 1 copy of Reset Stamp. Reset Stamp obviously going to be in all of the decks that we feature because it is so powerful. Being able to punish your opponent for being in front is critical in this format, and so we're going to try and fit it in every deck that we can in as high a count as possible.
Unfortunately, we've only really been able to fit 1 Reset Stamp in a lot of these lists just because we're focusing on consistency at the moment. But I feel like as we start to see lists kind of fine-tuned a bit more, I'd love to see Reset Stamp being increased in counts to 2 or 3 odds in decks that need it.
Yeah, so we need to make sure that as we're testing that we're looking for ways that we can improve that count because it's going to be so important. People that have large copies of Reset Stamp are obviously more likely to hit it on the turns that it is relevant. Now, normally, the energy is a boring part of the video, but for Alolan Exeggutor, it's got slightly more going for it. Obviously, we start off with 5 copies of Grass Energy. That's a pretty standard one, considering we're attacking for them. And there's a low count, considering we've also got those copies of Netball, so we are able to search them out. But then the rest of our energy line is really interesting. We've got 1 Lightning, a Fighting, a Psychic, a Dark, a Fire, and a Water. And the interesting thing is that lots of these energy actually have relevance in the meta at the moment. So for example, this Fire Energy you can use if you're playing something that has Heat Factory, enabled to draw 3 cards. You can just discard it using that. Something like Lightning Energy you can attach to Zebstriker and use to attack with that if you desperately need to. It's really interesting to the ways that we can kind of manipulate the energy types that we have.
Yeah, the Fire Energy is obviously the main one because obviously there's not only Heat Factory, which you can discard your Fire Energy and draw 3 cards to increase your Exeggutor damage output, but there's also cards like I think it's Giant Furnace, whatever it's called, the Fire Viridian. You can use that card to search for your Fire Energy, and then once it's in your hand, it's pretty easy to discard with a Sprint or a Mysterious Treasure. So the Fire Energy most definitely is the most important of these basic energy counts.
Yeah, and I think things like the fighting energy you might be able to use with like that Dojo Stadium. I'm not sure whether the energy is relevant for that one or whether it's the types. I can't remember.
No, I think it is the Fighting Energy. You're correct.
And then the dark one, can we use that with Dark Prism Stadium? I can't remember. I don't know. But
I don't think so.
But there's
The
potential.
Fighting Energy count, though.
There's potential use for all of these individual energy cards to potentially come up. Apart from the water one, the water one's useless. So we just discard that one straight away. But hey, that's the list. Nothing too crazy. It's an interesting list, but the key is making sure that you can get those Alolan Exeggutors out with Altaria. Those are the critical bits. If you've got access to them, then you'll be able to do damage, and consistency is the key. If you're able to do damage, then you should be able to win some games.
Yep, and with the Lance Prism, it's ideally not going to be too hard to chain attackers, so just got to get your energy into this card, and you should be good for the rest of the game.
Absolutely should. So thanks very much, Jordan, for coming along for this one.
Anytime.
And thanks everyone for watching. If you like the content, then please subscribe by hitting the Sableye in the middle of the screen. On the left-hand side are some videos that YouTube thinks that you'll like, and on the right is not our Unbroken Bonds playlist. It's our World's Trading Center playlist. I keep getting that wrong. It's almost as if I've been doing our Unbroken Bonds lists forever. So we got to get into the spirit of unified minds, Jordan.
I'm in the spirit. I don't know about you.
I'm freaking out. I don't know what to do. Anyway, we'll catch you next time for more from the Sableyes. See ya.